It has been an irrigation heavy day today for sure. I'm planning on going back out into the garage again and putting together a part of an irrigation manifold with anti-siphon valves. But I wanted to go over what an anti-siphon valve was before I headed out there and just threw that together. So we went over to the hardware store today, a little Ace attached to our grocery store out here, and we picked up a lawn genie, just this guy. You'll see that it's got the connections at the bottom. They're threaded. So the anti-siphon valves go up, get piped up and through versus the inline valves, which you'll see are straight across. And these guys, um, through their installation, are actually meant to be a foot above the area that you're going to be irrigating. And the reason for that is with these valves, you're looking to protect the potable water system of the household. So they have a mechanism that keeps it, with the elevation too, from going back and into your potable water system. Sometimes you might see it done in application where they just put it at the bottom. Technically, you're not supposed to do it that way. It doesn't mean that people don't install it that way. It's just supposed to be at the highest elevation. That way the water is continually traveling down. So on this guy, this one is 3/4 inch at the bottom. Some of them might be 1 inch. Most of the time the residential are 3/4 inch. And then we have this solenoid here, these two wires, which are the same. One hooks to grounding and one hooks to the active. And this one actually goes with, most of the time, bundle wire. The bundle wire comes in 3 or 5s. So depending on the size of the manifold, this is how it communicates with the controller, which you might have out in your garage or who knows where. And you have a manual flush valve here, and you can also use the solenoid to just turn it on and off by hand if it's not hooked up, to let the water go through. So that's the basics of this. Again, it is more the residential application. You tend to see inline and commercial and public. In the inline, you need a backflow preventer of some sort on site, again, to protect the domestic potable and drinking water from your outside irrigation. And especially in commercial that uses recycled, that's a no-brainer. So that is the fun. Again, lawn genie. I am out in the garage once again with supplies for this mini manifold irrigation build, where I'll just be putting these two anti-siphon valves in one. And we have got the valves, the primer and the glue, our Teflon tape, our finger cutter. God, this thing is ridiculously sharp. Obviously, it's for the pipe, not for fingers, but just wear gloves, be careful. It's stupid sharp. And then we have our T's and our adapter, our T and our adapters. I need to grab a couple of 90s as well. And then the hose bib adapter so we can run the water through for our little anti-siphon valve example. So I am gonna get building. So first things first is I needed to cut all of the pipe to the lengths. I had the two legs on the anti-siphon valves are going to be 18 inches long. I needed 4 of those. See me just marking here and getting ready to get those cut with our crazy sharp pipe cutters. I also needed to grab a couple extra lengths for the supply line that are going into the manifold, that's going into the manifold. I try to keep the valves in the manifold about a foot apart from each other because I feel like this is enough space where you could work on the individual valves without any issues. And the rest of this is just an effort to show just how sharp, again, that stinking tool is. And then this is me actually holding the pipe cutters the way I'm supposed to, not showing how sharp they are. took a little bit of time earlier this week to put together an anti-siphon valve irrigation manifold, not in its entirety, but just to kind of give an example of how it works. So I wanted to run through the process here. A little boring, you get to see me struggle in opening a primer and PVC glue here. It was quite the adventure. You should be able to get the caps off generally with the back of plier handles, but that was not working for me. So sorry for the very long intro in it, but basically the process was, you saw earlier, cutting out some pipe, getting the fittings together, putting the Teflon tape onto the threads, getting the hose bibs, or sorry, not the hose bibs, the anti-siphon valves set up with those. And here you can see I'm just starting to build the bottom of the manifold, or the entry pipe here. So this is where it would be connected into the main line, and on one side of it we're actually going to end up having a shut-off valve so that we can turn off the manifold separately from the rest of the water supply. That way, if we need to make any repairs in the future, we don't have to worry about going to the main meter and shutting things off. So highly recommended. If you have an irrigation system and you don't have a shut off, it's a good idea to put that in. All right, so getting back to the anti-siphon build itself, I had originally put in the adapters to one of the anti-siphon valves before putting in the PVC lines. And then the other adapter, what I did was I glued the PVC lines to the adapters and then put those directly into the valves, which is why you'll see me bringing those, or you saw me bring those out separately. Here I am actually using a wrench to tighten up those adapters into the anti-siphon valve. You can only go so far with hand tightening before you have to manage to bring out the tools to get it flush with the valve itself. I'm coming back down and getting the valves ready to connect to the main line with a couple of the T's and the 90s. One thing worth noting when working with the PVC and the glue and the primer, when the pieces get fit together, when they're being glued together, they're actually supposed to be stuck together and then turned about 90 degrees. So you'll see in a second when I'm doing the main line, as I'm putting the T's in, there it is, I'm actually seeing that those two T's are lining up on that PVC length so that I don't have crookedy valves once it's all done. So that's crookedy's a word. It's something to keep in mind just when they're going on in order to solidify the glue, turn it, but you want to start it about 90 degrees counterclockwise from where you want to end the output of it. Another thing you'll probably see is that as I'm putting these pieces together, I'm actually keeping everything pretty far away from my body. The primer is super strong, as is the glue, or as my husband lovingly corrected me, the solvent. So definitely make sure you're wearing gloves if you're doing something like this, because getting this stuff on your fingers is very rough. So you want to keep it off of your clothes, and if you have protection measures, I just did ours over the dirt. Again, this is kind of our own build, so I'm not too worried about it. But if you're working with somebody, you might want to make sure that all of their surfaces are covered up, because you don't want this getting on any nice concrete or any hardscapes or pavers. That would just be a nightmare. So keep it away from your body, keep it away from your clothes, keep it away from nice finished material. You may have noticed a few seconds ago that I actually cut the main line and the T from the valve after gluing it in. So even though this video is sped up and adjusted a little bit, I made sure I kept everything in there, including my super fun novice mistake. I ended up gluing the valve in backwards. I just got a little excited, and it was
just a silly error on my side. These valves have arrows that show where the water flow is through the system, and you can completely avoid it. Like I said, I got excited to be putting together a manifold and taking the video and everything, and I just ran with it. So here I'm actually gluing it back on. I grabbed a coupling, threw it in, glued it together. The one downside is that now I had one side that was a little bit shorter than the other, and that's okay because we are gonna have a little bit of an elevation change in the front, and so that valve, we decided, is just gonna end up feeding the garden bed instead of running underneath the hardscapes. So by about this time, I'm pretty much done with building our little 2-piece manifold. Again, it's not complete. You have to connect it into the main line. I have to put the shut-off valve. But for the demonstration purposes, what I wanted to do was get a hose thread connection into one side so that I could test the valve and I could show where the water output was and everything like that, make sure everything was working, but also just to kind of show on the video how things work. And again, these are pretty simple materials that are available at basically any general hardware store. I had my husband's help in picking out what I needed, so we got a hose and adapter, which the threads are a little bit more coarse on, and there's different parts in these adapters. There's male, female, and then the sizes, of course, you need to find are appropriate. Most of your residential, again, are going to be 3/4 of an inch, so ours are built that way. It's pretty standard, and I just put the Teflon tape on the hose adapter, threaded it in. Of course, I also needed to put another adapter on to fit that adapter since the pipe was not threaded originally. So a little bit of coordination to get the video going and to get everything tested, but at the end I feel like it was all worth it to see a successful manifold build. So here I am just getting that hose into the threads. Generally you want the glue to sit for 15 minutes to make sure that it was solidified. Honestly, again, everything's sped up, so it definitely, maybe not for the last fitting, but that one is going to be taken out anyways when we had connected to the main line. So for everything else, it was long enough to sit and let it go. And here I am finally testing the manifold itself. As I'm opening the valve, I'm actually using the solenoid, which is that cylindrical round black thing at the top, and I'm using that to open up the valve, let the water flow through, and then closing it back up, and then testing the manual flush valve as well. And that's the little piece on the back of the valve with what looks like a Phillips head screwdriver insert, and both of them kind of have the same output one way or another. That knob at the top is actually the flow control. So this is just a run through of testing all the different elements on the valves, make sure everything is working okay, and that is how an irrigation manifold is built.